we're going to get started, it is a little after 10, and we want to stay prompt. Everybody's busy, and so we're glad you're all here. We're going to probably go around and just introduce, get a sense of who's everybody that's here. First of all, I just wanted to, as we've been having obviously ongoing issues with our with flooding and with riverfront issues and with obviously bringing things together, working with Canadian Pacific. We had a meeting about a month ago. Tony and his staff, a number of people came here and we had a great discussion. Their commitment was we have regular discussions. As some of the questions have come up as the water's gone down, I called Tony the other day and he said, I'll jump on a plane and we'll come down and we'll be here to have this discussion. I just want to, if nothing else, set the tenor for this meeting. You know, they are doing what they need to do and we're trying to do what we need to do, but it's not been confrontational in the last month. You know, there's been a history of that in the past where there's been some differences, but they have reached out, we've reached out, and this is an ongoing process of communication. So things that are going on are a process, and we want to communicate what's going on to each other, what our plans are, what their plans are, and how we can continue to work together for the long term. We have, as many of you know, we've had riverfront plans. Those continue, but as we look at, as I mentioned yesterday at our management update and mayor council discussion, you know, we're going to be having a task force to take a look at a variety of items, and a very quick synopsis of that is to, you know, how are we going to protect not only the city assets but also everybody, and what's that look like at what flood levels, as an example. All those things have to be taken into consideration because there's been some changes in weathers that we've been facing, and potentially a view at a 22 or 23 foot flood may not be enough in the future. So this is a fluid process, pardon the pun, but a process here of getting everyone together to continue to talk about what can be done. They've committed and already trying to get the crossings over. They said there'll be temporary ones and they're delivering all that. So I don't want to ramble on in our case. I want to give maybe an opportunity first to go around and introduce everybody to the group so everybody knows who's here. And then I thought we could go into just giving some updates, kind of what you guys have in the plans, what we're doing, and then we can kind of go from there and have a discussion about that. So again, I'm Frank Klipsch, Mayor of the City of Davenport.
Corey Segal, Davenport City Administrator.
Steve Ahrens, the Executive Officer with the Riverfront Improvement Commission.
Zach Peterson, Landscape Architect, Public Works.
Kyle Grip, Alderman at Large.
Nicole Gleason, Public Works Director.
Brian Shad, City Engineer.
Mike Manson, 7th Ward Alderman.
Red Button Commission.
Reed Rossi, 5th Ward Alderman.
Ryan Reed, Riverfront Improvement Commission.
Marion McGinnis, 3rd Ward Alderman.
Pat Walton, Chair of the Riverfront Improvement Commission.
Carl Rumpert, Secretary of the Riverfront Improvement Commission.
Bill Churchill, Riverfront Improvement Commission.
Bill Ashton, I'm consulting civil structural engineer on the Riverfront Commission.
Dee Bremer on the Riverfront Commission.
Andy Cummings on the Public Affairs team with Canadian Pacific.
Scott Jardice, Chief Engineer for CP. Tom Jarrett, General Manager for CP.
Tony Marquis, Senior Vice President Operations, CP Rail.
Great. Well, again, we want to thank you for coming. Get the recognition for coming the longest way for this meeting. So thank you for that. And thank all of you, both the Riverfront Improvement Commission, for their continued work that they've been doing, and the good position that commission is in with finances. And we heard yesterday your interest in helping the people at the Freight House and whatever. So thank you for that. That's a great sign as well, that the status and the professional way you're handling all the affairs. So thank you for that, and all of our alderman colleagues that are here as well. So with that, maybe if you and your team want to give a little update of what's been going on from your perspective, and then we'll talk about some of ours, and then we can discuss a little bit from there.
Okay, I'll just give a brief update. Thank you for the kind words, and from CP's point of view, it's important that we work with our communities. That's it's just important. It's part of what we do. So we did have a positive meeting a month ago after I think a shaky start, but we cleared the air that we are here to be a partner with you as we move forward. We've learned a lot from this flood, as you have. We have been very methodical in the data that we've been keeping and the work that we've been doing. We've committed to working with you on the crossings, on the roads. That's been an absolute challenge. Yes, we did raise the track, and yes, we did keep the commerce of this nation going, and yes, we did keep the customers served. And we've had so much positive feedback from customers and from residents on what we've done. So I think there's a lot more positives than the negatives. There are challenges in everything that we do. There's challenges in change. We have committed to work with you and your team and your engineering team on doing the right thing. And that is what we will do. There's other things that we've looked at. We've heard about the flood wall. Yes, it would be remiss if we didn't look at doing something different in the future. So we are looking at a flood wall, nothing etched in stone, but what can we do different to protect our assets and even city assets if flooding happens again? And it just seems it is the new norm. So the learnings that we have taken, we are going to put some into action, but we will do everything working with your team. We'll do it the right way. For the Riverfront Group, I've seen your vision. You've got a great future plan. The only thing I would ask is, can we help you? Can we sit on the commission with you? Can we put somebody on your team? Because I think going forward, that's what we need to do. And we want to be an active participant. We have to protect our assets, absolutely, but we have to respect what you're looking at long-term as well. So we're here to talk about that as well.
Thank you. A little bit maybe, I'm not sure, Brian, Nicole, you know, some of the things that are going on and some of the issues that we've been working on. I just want to note, I know our Public Works folks will be leaving at 10:50 because there's a technical planning session with Canadian Pacific Engineers that they're going to be having. It's already scheduled as well. So, you know, this is an ongoing process that we're dealing with. So we've had some of the issues, and maybe bring up a couple things related to the crossings and the bike paths and those kind of issues that we brought along. So a little bit of updates from your perspective.
Sure, so as soon as the rail raise was complete, we've been in contact with CP via phone and in-person meetings on a regular basis, getting our feedback as far as minimum requirements for crossing restoration, treatment for the crossing restoration, all of that, making sure they're staying in compliance with our requirements, DOT requirements, and obviously the Corps of Engineer requirements as well. So the latest meeting we had was on Monday to share 30% drawings, and at this point, and then just going back and forth with issues we see with those 30% engineering
Define
drawings.
what a 30% drawing is.
Oh, so just kind of the baseline where the different, you know, elevations would be on the engineering drawings, where the sidewalks are going to be, how wide the crossing is going to be, what the treatment's going to be. So just making sure all of the layout works before actually doing the intense mathematical calculations that are required for final engineering plans.
For each of the
30%
permits.
refers to a percentage of completion on a plan? Is that what
Correct,
30%
yes.
means, not
Yeah.
a grade or an
Yeah.
elevation?
Yeah.
It's a percentage of plan.
Correct. So that's what we had on Monday. They have HDR doing those designs. And so one of the things that's required by, I believe it's state code, is that if a crossing is disturbed, it's rehabilitated to be able to be crossed again within 30 days. So there's a very expedited timeline on this. That what we have been communicated to is that final engineering drawings would be done by June 21st for all the crossings except for Gaines. We've asked them to slow down a bit on Gaines because of some of the challenges with Modern Woodman Park there. So they are expediting to that 30 days as much as they can, and that's, I think, a critical reason of having this meeting today, so everyone knows that if anything different wants to be done, we need to be talking about it now, because they have a very big investment in HDR. They have 4 or 5 different HDR engineers actually each designing the individual crossings. That way they can be expedited. So that's basically where we are. We have the next follow-up meeting today to go through additional notes from what we saw on those initial drawings Monday.
So, Mayor, can we ask Nicole a couple questions? All right. They're doing every crossing, including Maine and the ones at Heritage Park. Is that, I saw a couple of these, but is that every crossing they have at 30%?
So we have, I believe, 5 crossings at 30%, all of the vehicular access ones. We have not seen the ones on pedestrian only yet. We were more expediting the ones that were for.
So the one near the Freight House is now, it does not have a temporary crossing, but they're working on a permanent.
Correct.
Okay.
How about River Heritage?
Well, yeah, it sounds like the River Heritage too.
That is included in the scope. We have not seen 30% on that one yet, but it is included in the scope.
So I guess my next question is, as they're at 30%, and as you give back your requirements for just the street, are you also including all of the entryways to the street and the facilities that would connect to the new street?
Yes.
All right. Is there a point, not at 100% completion, but somewhere short of that, that there would be a cost estimate that the HDR could give on those permanent crossings?
Well, at this point, it's CP's cost, not ours.
No, I didn't, I'm not assigning costs. I'm asking about a probable cost estimate. And my question further leads to this whole 30-day permanent crossings need to be done. And what we envision what the final plan would be. So I want to step back and think, we want to look at this holistic and look at, could we live more with a temporary crossing somewhere, given that the cost of the permanent one would not be what we permanently want? Does that make sense?
I got you.
And I believe that's why we're here today.
Yeah, so I guess
Yeah.
what, if I could add a little help here, I think it would be very important as you work at this, that those costs are developed, so we can weigh those with what a different permanent design could look like on both sides of the track.
And, yeah, and I believe that's why we're here today, because we knew once they put 100% designs in and started 100% restoration, then they're done, and anything after that would be on the city. So if there's certain areas we want to slow down and become more collaborative, that was the purpose really of today.
So I took your partnership as real partnership, so I'm happy with that, because while I'm very disappointed in seeing the tracks where they are without the final vision in mind, that we have to kind of go backwards and now go forward for a final vision, I still see that we could have an opportunity here. I mean, flooding is never going away. You obviously have recognized it in a traditional railroad way, raising the tracks. We have looked at it in many different ways over the last 30 years as a community. That, sometimes flooding is, you use temporary things, sometimes you find and build permanent ideas. And I would hope that we could, with others' help, sit down and kind of look at what that could be. What could we do to alleviate the raising of the crossing in terms of our enjoyment and use of the property? I mean, it never will happen again that I could walk from Dillon Fountain, that's been there over 100 years, to the river. I'm never going to be able to have a straight shot looking down Main Street and walking to the river, because you physically can't do that. You're going to have to build ramps or whatever. So we have some what I think use issues on our path that we've had for, again, more than 100 years, that we have to reconcile with what your plans are. And I just don't ever see that happening in 30 days, so I hope that you work with the city in what needs to be done in a very short period of time. And I think as a community, we should wait and be willing for temporary crossings until we have a better understanding of what permanent things can be, look like and be accepted by our community.
Is HDR under contract with you or
No, with
Canadian Pacific?
From the beginning, Bill, because we had asked that from the beginning, as they said, this is all on them. You know, this was, they came by and they have the responsibility to restore the crossing. And so that's the cost, both these drawings and the cost of the new crossings are their responsibility, and they've acknowledged that.
I want to echo what Dee said. Most of you know in here that I worked on flood protection at Dubuque, Clinton, and Waterloo, and designed many, many closure structures that and lots of removable flood wall. And if we want to be able to match the stuff that Danforth's invested on the riverfront, I think that we have to consider doing various types of flood protection other than something that's, we can do that. In Waterloo, we have removable panels everywhere, all the way down to downtown, so fit what their ideas. And I would think here for sure on the street crossings, we could just, we'll have a closure structure with removable panels. It doesn't have to be a swinging gate. And in other parts of the whole riverfront, you could have levees that could be later added height to, and other areas like Dillon Fountain and the removable panels. It's my understanding from fighting floods here before that the water flowed into your viaduct at a river stage of 18 and a half about, and then you were pumping the river, so you couldn't pump. So to keep the track open, you came and raised everything and made an enclosure so you could pump that viaduct. I don't know today what river stage you have to maintain your track and your traffic. But I think that has to be a subject of discussion for the city and you, and how we help you get to what you gotta have for your traffic. And that needs to involve a lot of modern flood protection. Not everybody thinks of flood protection in a levee, but many, many places there's no levee today. It's a lot of removable panels. The casino across the river, removable panels. Around John Deere Stadium, there's removable panels. So I think we got to talk about other ways to help you and satisfy us, and it's probably going to take some more sophisticated flood protection.
Mike, did you have something?
Just something that came up recently, talking with a lot of folks last night. In your discussion, and I brought it up yesterday, and so did Rick, and you guys, as you raise the tracks and you put stuff into our floodplain, have you discussed with the engineers and such, or the Corps, about doing that, and infilling and putting stuff into the floodplain that wasn't there? So I guess the question is it permitted? Did you talk with the Corps? Did you do that? Or did you just raise the tracks and not have the discussion? There's concern with that we infilled into the floodplain and changed the floodplain, and we didn't have a discussion about that. So I don't know if you can answer, but I'd love to know that eventually. And then, sir, you mentioned you're thinking or talking or looking at a flood, I wrote flood wall on your tracks. Is that what you meant? Or in combination with us in a flood protection mitigation system? If you could please clarify what you said there.
It's in conjunction with the city. It's ideas that we're bouncing back and forth. There's no drawings. There's nothing there. It's just, what are we going to do different in the future? It's just open discussion.
Okay, so in the overall discussion, not particular to a flood wall at your tracks.
Well, we are protecting our, definitely protecting our infrastructure. But we are talking with the city. We've approached city engineers for ideas as well, and discussion. It's in a discussion.
About a flood wall at the track.
Yes.
That's what I was making sure I heard that. That's a concern. Okay, thank you.
And
I'd love to have the city people talk to us about that if that's what you're talking about.
Are you speaking specifically to the low viaduct area?
That's what we're talking
about.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, so.
Just that short.
Right.
Yeah.
So the one he's referring to now is the one specific to where they're doing the temporary sandbag wall? and that would be 100% in their right of way. It's been mentioned to us that we would see the designs, but we have not seen designs yet.
So please keep us informed about stuff like
It's
that,
not
because
all
those
in
are
there
major
right away.
discussions.
It's in the government right away for the Iowa abutment of Rockadam 15.
And we have made the Corps aware and have an inquiry out to them and have not heard back.
So this is an area that has traditionally been sandbagged.
Correct.
So in lieu of a sandbag, it would be this wall that you're talking about. Is that the?
That's my understanding, but again, I haven't seen.
It's not the whole length here.
They-
And maybe we'll have there, for a moment, Bill, what's your, Scott, you were saying, are you familiar with what we're talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really similar to what Nicole was saying. It's a concept that we're exploring right now to protect the depression area. Nothing's been finalized. We've never built anything like this, so as we learn more, we'll be in communication with the city about if we decide to do something there, obviously. we're gonna
There's two
solicit.
things here that have to do with the railroad. The first thing is they can't pump the viaduct when there's nothing to protect it above 18 and a half. They're pumping the river. It's always been that way. It flowed down River Drive into the viaduct and they had to shut down the traffic because they couldn't pump it. What they did is they built an enclosure around that right now so they can pump it. And then they raised the track, because once they can pump it, now they gotta get the track out of the water. So that's what they've done, two things. And then from a railroad engineering standpoint, traffic, that makes sense. It doesn't make sense to us, but it does to them. And it's those things that we have to work together to find a way that can satisfy everybody.
Yeah, maybe clarify the water, and maybe, Scott, the water is pumped where? Back just over the wall into regular river? The river, into, or whatever, however close the river is at that point.
Correct.
As we would pump from one side of our temporary barriers over the top, this would be pumping into that same body of water.
Yeah, there's a pump station right there at the bridge.
Okay.
I mean, the river is a fascinating thing, because when it gets to that height, it actually comes the opposite direction on River Drive towards you. And so, you wouldn't know that till you've been on there and you really saw it. It's a fascinating thing, which means there's a lot of river to like wall off if you're not gonna have something temporary coming across the streets. Again, I come from a perspective where I feel like as a Riverfront Commission, we've been handed a difficult problem to be solved. And we clearly were not prepared for this difficult problem, but we want to work through it to an end where we have a riverfront that everyone has been dreaming about. We want a wow riverfront, and I think you can definitely be part of it. And it may be a way that we can permanently solve or mitigate, maybe never solve, mitigate a lot of efforts for flooding. As you spend your time on this, we've invested, as in the community invested, in a plan that was just recently approved by the city council. We call it the RDG plan, which you have seen. It would be, I think, helpful if the railroad would think about funding an extended look at that plan, as it also talks about elevating land on both sides of your track. At looking at that plan into what you would like to do, and see if we can come up with yet a better way of doing it, and maybe put in place portions of this more permanent solution. And I think that's a positive way for us on the commission, as we can see what the vision there is and how it could be worked in to what you're doing. And again, maybe I was in local government for 40 years, so maybe 30 days seems a bit quick to me, to get a really good solution. To me, a 30-day repair and putting back would be you're putting it back exactly like it was. And boy, none of these crossings are exactly, they will never be what they were. I mean, dropping off into, I don't even know how the back of Union Station would be used. So I'm just using that as an example that I think we really, really need to spend some time. And I know that you do not want to spend any money outside of your railroad, but I think given the surprise and the issues that we're taking on temporarily, it would be very helpful if you could step to the plate and help us look at that vision. Because there are many people out in the community, you know, they see you as this as an eyesore, or they see it as something that cannot be fixed. While you have many happy customers, you have one community that's not very happy. You know, they feel that what has happened in the downtown has been what you would do out in a county, in the farm fields. You know, the video of your guys burning trash on the track is kind of the ultimate example of not knowing where you are located. And I don't mean that disrespectful. I understand what a railroad's mission is, and I get that. But we have this bigger plan. And I hope that you would step to the plate and kind of help us with that other portion, and that it wouldn't be on the city or the downtown partnership or the Figge Art Museum to fund that. I think we should look at it in a way of how can that work. And not just what that plan was from the dam to Harrison, but how do we move that down through to Marquette? What is that going to look like? And it's easier as you get, you know, past the stadium. But I think that would help us to have the kind of what this park can be in the end view as you do your work. And I guess that's kind of my wish and I would think the commission's wish as we communicate with you today.
Is there you talked about the quick turnaround. Can you talk a little bit about that, and is it a matter of trying to get it done and be done with it kind of a thing, because that's your responsibility? Maybe a little bit ideas of the 30-day or relatively short time. And one side, we applaud the fact that you stepped up right away and are looking to get them passable again on the crossing. Maybe talk a little bit about the timing and the time restraints that you may be under related to this.
Time constraints are going to be driven just by the request that you mentioned, Dean, and how we've been working with Nicole. Honestly, we can move as fast as we receive feedback and comments from the city. As long as you're satisfied, we'll move in that direction.
It's good news.
What I'm hearing today is maybe we want to take a pause on some of the things. So if we put a permanent solution in place, everybody's satisfied with that. That's a reasonable approach.
And go ahead.
Yeah. The last thing we would want to do is shy away from the 30 days because of other view, and then all of a sudden we end up in a court of law saying you didn't fix it in 30 days. Because we're focused on this, what we can do to get it back as quick as we possibly can so it's safe and aesthetically done correct for a crossing. Okay? Your project is separate and apart. You bring a new dimension to the table. So I'm just being respectful of that. So this isn't as easy now as just let's build some crossings and up to grade, and we'll build the ramps to them and it'll all look good. A new dimension here is, will it fit with the long-term plan?
Yeah, I think that's and again, as I said when I opened this, I sense this sense of collaboration and partnership and open-mindedness from our meeting a month ago and beyond. So it's just a matter of you guys and your team are already working with ours. So I think we need to take this information and see how we can move it forward. I think we need to also get involved with is the 30 days Iowa Department of Transportation?
Yeah, so that's in code, and so they were sticking to the code and complying, and honestly, it was moving pretty fast. We were surprised how fast it was moving too, which is why when we talked on Monday, Mayor, I said it might be a good idea to get everyone together because, no pun intended, once they're 100% drawings, the train's left the station. Like, let's slow down, talk as a team. If there's 2 or 3 critical priorities that absolutely need to get done this summer, then we want to march to that. Staff will do that. If we feel like there's a couple other things we need to slow down because we don't want them to restore a crossing and 2 years later have us come tear it right back out again, that's not worth anybody's investment. So that's why I think having this kind of collaborative conversation, because if they're planning to spend $10 million or whatever it is, and then we come and tear half of it back out again, that's not money well spent.
Right.
So that's why I wanted to, as Dee said, look at the big picture of this as a team before we got too far down the road to change anything.
And I would say, as a team, we have to discuss this with the Iowa Department of Transportation. I mean, it's not a matter of you're trying to do what you need to by statute, and we want something different. We don't want the load of that fall on you. We need to be, we'd like a little more time to take a look at this so that we can jointly come up with a plan, if that's where we're headed. Yeah, Mary?
I'd like to know what the legal means would be to, whether it's an agreement that allows us to bypass state code. And I'm not expecting you to tell me the call, but yeah, what the legal
I'm sure
process of this is. So that-
CP's legal counsel and myself, we could talk to the Iowa DOT and come to some understanding that would allow a pause.
I think if the temporary, and I can't say that, speak to that, you'll have to, if the temporary crossings that we have today are workable for the near future, I think that should be included in the communication to the DOT. If they're not workable and you need more things to make them temporary, I think that's the other thing. I don't know how the stormwater and everything else is working for you, so, I mean, I don't know what else you need to say, okay, let's just take a pause here. But I think once you figure that out, including that, then I think that as a city, you probably can clearly have the DOT acknowledge what you want to do.
Of course, we're still dealing with a flooded area, so it's, until that's somewhat less, it's gonna be hard to.
Marion, that's a great point, because, we're looking at long-term, we're looking at next, and I know this figuratively from a sports analysis, but, we're looking at next season. We haven't finished the fourth quarter yet. I think we need to be looking for that. You're trying to do, as you said, we said 30 days. If that's what the statute is, we're gonna get you 30 days. I'm encouraged by that because they've been so responsive. Like I said, I think we have how many engineers they are working. Every crossing has their own engineer, so they can move this along rapidly. So we need to work together on that. Is that something that we ought to explore then, this idea?
I would agree.
Great.
Yeah, we want to do the right thing.
That's great, that's great. So,
And let's just add in my other request, which is I would love that you two maybe employ our landscape architects that we use to give kind of their vision, or at least meet with them. And again, I think it would behoove you to see how that could work into the final road designs. And that would give us an indication on our way, like where does the bike path go? And we have this elevated, wonderful water feature on one side that elevates up. So I think there's just a whole lot there that our community could say, in these stages, I see how this all works in. And that would be helpful for us to be able to talk to the city, as in our community, about this.
So we're gonna walk before we run.
Okay.
We will put someone will join the committee, full-time, not full-time, I'm not gonna commit. We will decide with you, but I would like to have somebody from CP working with you on the committee. We have a lot to offer, and we have big ears. So, cool.
that's wonderful. Thank you for that offer, and I think we would be ill-advised not to take that, to get you involved. So thank you for that. And Carl.
What has the railroad company done in previous flood experiences when the rails were not accessible? Did you reroute freight to other lines? Did you?
Well, rerouting is one of the easiest things to do, except Union Pacific, Burlington Northern, Kansas City Southern, they were all underwater. So rerouting was not a great option this year. This has just been a horrendous year through this whole area, north and south. So rerouting is one for sure. In the past, we would have shut down, which would have just been critical to local industry. We would have been down 4, 5, 6 weeks, so there would have been furloughed people everywhere. my company, your big companies down the river, they wouldn't have been able to get their traffic.
Is that the past practice?
So the past practice has been 3, 4, 5 days. Like, you can live with that. You get to build up a traffic and then you work your way out of it. This would have been critical this year.
Is the rail bed a permeable structure? Can the water flow through it to the other side, or does it actually,
You can't use a rail bed as is, as a berm, no.
it's not a berm? The water cuts through it, which would tend to actually make it more stable.
Yeah, you want,
Right.
in our industry, mud is the enemy, so you want water to flow.
So are you concerned about the raised tracks that you have right now? Because there's water against that, or on a long-term basis, are you concerned about that?
I'll let,
Absolutely, we're concerned. It's something that we thought through, and as we raised the tracks, we incorporated some additional material for that stability. So at the height of the tracks, we absolutely know they're stable. So it was a concern that.
So you're confident over many years that those will be fine even under flood conditions for long periods?
Absolutely. And we maintain our track across our entire network, so they'll require maintenance. Again,
So-
the current condition, subject to what we discussed with the commission and then public works.
So given the nature of the track, what you just said is the water will infiltrate to the other side of the tracks. But it won't go back because it comes in because it's under pressure from the river. But it will then stagnate on our side of the tracks. So the water that isn't stopped by the rail bed will just be ours.
We would work again to make sure that's not the case, that the rail bed is intentionally permeable. It's got some holes between all those rocks in it, so you're right, it probably flows in a little bit faster, and it should flow out. at
Well, there's no
approximately-
there's not really nothing behind it to push it like the way the river pushes it through the rail bed coming in.
Yeah, not the same amount of pressure, you're correct.
Well, I would have assumed that as you're looking at the street design, you're looking at the storm sewer designs on the land side of the river. And also looking at how fast it comes down the hill, so we don't have little swimming pools and big rains when it's not flooding. So I would imagine all of that's all part of what they would have to do in terms of permanent design of the rail crossing.
That will all have to be addressed, yes.
Yeah, so, yeah, I didn't see that. I do have this May 24th memo, just the top part of the memo, and I didn't really see that as, discussed in terms of one of the bullet points. But I would imagine you would want, that's gonna be a little bit more work too, to be able to.
What we've seen to date is basically a centerline profile as we look at vehicles passing the ADA pedestrian route.
Right.
We haven't gotten into spot elevations and cross sections to see how that plays out.
Yeah, and where those catch basins, and if they're much larger, and do we need to catch up above it more than we have in the past? Because it used to run right through. I mean, all of that has to be,
Their engineers will.
yeah.
I would say, Tony mentioned earlier, but I think we're all looking at the real possibility of a new normal. And, more water, more often, and it's not just, this was unique in and of itself. I think we've had 3 top 10 crests within a short period of time. And obviously, that's a new normal. And all the floods you have all around you, you can't divert traffic anymore. That length of time we're all been facing. So I think I'm encouraged by the fact that we all realize there's a new normal and we've got to look at things differently. And I think, as we said, what we did in the past, we got to learn from that, but we got to realize what are some of the challenges. And I think one of the things that we're going to be discussing as part of our overall flood task force is not only how we're going to protect, we're going to partnership with people around us to protect everything. That may not be just what we do, but in partnership with CP, partnership with the landowners and the businesses, how do we all come together and protect things? But at what level? That becomes another issue. We thought 23 or 22 something or other. was gonna be like that's the apex of what's gonna happen. Well, it could be higher than that. And,
Well, in
we
the
gotta be
89
prepared.
report and plan, it was to 25 feet. So I think that 25 feet should be looked at. You might want to think higher, but I think it would be very, I mean, if you look back in those reports, you need a couple feet, even if you never think a flood's going to get that
We
high.
agree. I think we
And
all
life
agree
has
with that.
changed, as you know, and we all know.
Yeah, so I think all of that becomes part of it and what the ways we can deal with that. And like I said, I'm encouraged that you're willing to partner us with us. in this process. Bill, yeah, you had something.
Well, to be fair, there were some statements made that aren't valid. That is the interior drainage problem when it rains inside the protection is Davenport's problem. It is not the railroad, because the railroad's ballast is porous. The water will flow right through it. But interior drainage, when you build the Helsco barriers, now you're stopping the drainage on top of the surface, and that's our problem, not their problem. They didn't change the interior drainage problem that we have.
Right, right. And I think that's what Brian was saying as well. We've got to take that in consideration long-term to what we do to add to this process as well. Yeah, thanks for that addition. Yeah, Rita?
So I just want to, two things. One, thank you for being here, those of you from the railroad. I appreciate that, and your willingness to collaborate with us on our riverfront. I want to make sure I'm clear on the 30-day piece, the June 21st deadline. Is that something that a subgroup that's sitting here is going to go away? That's a soft deadline now, wherein, because I agree with Dee, I think June 21st is a little bit too quick to make some permanent decisions. Have we just agreed that that's a soft deadline now and that some crossings will be delayed until further for more permanent solutions?
Yeah,
Is that
but
correct?
maybe I could mention what I heard, and then let's confirm that, is that we want to work together to find out with the IDOT, the Iowa Department of Transportation, that can be
Can be done.
flexible so that we can have the time to do the planning that we need to do.
And if they agree that that's fine, then if everyone else agrees, we have the
Then we
time
can take
to
some more
do
time to
something,
do the
right?
planning.
So the only
We don't
thing
want to hang, the idea is not to hang them up and miss a
Of course.
deadline, as they said before.
I just think it's worthwhile having a little bit more time to have a further
It would be
discussion.
30 days from the water receipt, right?
Correct, well, and that's what's in the code, and I know
Yeah.
you guys have been working really hard to be compliant with that, and so, yep. So
Is
that's-
that water receipts from your tracks or from our riverfront?
I think it's access,
Is that-
because that's, the issue is getting access and suitable soils to actually do the work, because it's been so saturated.
The only thing I'd add is for us to have a time frame. So if we do end up being able to extend the discussion and get more permanent items that we all can agree on, but have a time frame tied to that. And I'm thinking, the reason I say that, this is already June. We have hopefully events that will happen at the riverfront, but I wouldn't want this discussion about the crossings to extend into 2020. So a time frame of something that seems reasonable, I don't know, maybe 90 days, 120, I'm not sure what that is, but something
I think the
longer.
staff needs to go back with the two of them, with our
Depending.
wishes of like a bigger
Right.
thing, and then figure out what it would take to be able to get.
There's
And
a
the last-
subgroup of council and the Riverfront Improvement Commission that are already meeting on issues. This might be a good use of that group to kind of vet some of those policy things on a quicker basis. Because hauling all of this together is logistically challenging. But since that subgroup has already been meeting and doing good work, if I think both bodies are amenable to continuing that as kind of a sounding board, that might be helpful from a staff
And
perspective.
I know this is coming eventually, but just to have some visuals, I personally have a really hard time visualizing how the current tracks, because my office is down there at Union Station, and I have photos I took after you raised the tracks. And on a side note, very sophisticated equipment you have for raising tracks. I mean, I've watched it come through. But I have a hard time visualizing how that's going to look aesthetically once it's done. Is there other places you've done this that we can go to a website and kind of see outcomes?
This will be the website.
Are we the test?
Another trend setter, Davenport.
We are
See
the
that.
first in line, so that's comforting.
That points to your need of another resource besides these type of drawings to be able
Yes.
to get us to where we.
I think that'd go a long way for the public as well, just being able to visualize what's coming.
Yeah, I think that the tracks have been, the way they used to be, kind of just something you look through to the panorama of the river. now, as you said, you kind of look over that to get there. So the landscaping around it and it fit into the downtown is a great thought, how that could be done. Yeah, Mike, you had something?
I just want to add that this, getting your design folks, our probably work with their design folks to work this together, so they don't build something, we have our plan or the plan for the riverfront, have the design people be together, whether it's with you guys or separately in the design phase, so they're building something with the same thought process for the riverfront as the focal point. I know you guys have your thing, but we could have it as a riverfront as the focal point, and the railroad be part of that, so the design people are sitting next to each other doing that.
Sure. I think we, whether we clarified it exactly or not, I think this needs to be the Royal Hour plan, and I think it always was. It was, from my perspective, we had a plan, the work that was done from the Figge and the Riverfront Improvement Commission and our people came together to enhance the original plan that we heard from the citizens that we wanted to do. So I think that makes perfect sense to make sure we view that as the collective hour plan and make sure that now CP becomes an active partner in that plan. So I think that's great.
Well, Mayor, with all due respect, that plan doesn't have a 3-foot-high rail bed
No, I
right
understand.
through the center of it.
I understand, that's what I mean. We have to work together now as a team to accommodate that and take a look at how it fits into potentially a modified or an enhanced plan.
So what would it take to restore the rail to its original elevation? I didn't ask you that question. I asked these people that question.
What would it take?
Yeah.
It could be done. It can be done.
That doesn't really answer my question. I mean, of course it can be done, it's just an engineering question.
Mm-hmm. It can be
To
done.
restore our riverfront to its original status. It's damaged now by your change of elevation.
I think it's damaged by a lot more than our change of elevation.
I understand, but we have a practice of mitigating the water damage. We don't have a method to mitigate the damage that the rail is causing.
Well, I think that, again, as I mentioned before, I think that the fact is, and I'm not going to speak for either of you,
Thank you.
But I think the reality of this is we want an outstanding riverfront and riverfront plan. They want to keep operational. They have the opportunity on their pieces of property to do that, and we have responsibility to work with all the people around us to make sure the plans for our future on the riverfront are brought to the highest level as possible. So, yeah, Mike.
Just a thought, Carl. I get that, we've had concerns, as you guys know, with the railroad and what you've done, but it's wonderful that you're here talking. But if we take it back down, then the flood comes back, they're gonna raise it back up. I mean, we'll just keep doing that. I assume you would just raise yours back up every time to keep your commerce moving. So if that's gonna happen, we gotta figure out something, even though that's probably not the best case, I agree, to do that. Whether it's a whole mitigation flood discussion, and that's part of it, which it should be, but if it's gonna be, they're gonna raise it in the flood, and then we're gonna take it back down, and that might cause more.
Well, Alderman, yes, I appreciate what you're saying. It seems that that is seeking a permanent solution to what is, in fact, a temporary problem. So, why do we need to do that?
Well, if we're believing that the flood's not gonna happen, I assume we all believe the flood's gonna happen. I mean, I don't understand how you wouldn't.
And that's another whole topic, but I would agree with you, the fact is, putting
Forgive me if you
putting
misunderstood
temporary
what I was
flood
saying.
protection the way we used to do it, we've learned from that. We're gonna do something better and enhance those. This is part of that overall planning that we have to observe. There is a new normal, and we all have to work together to be able to deal with that. So, any other questions? Anybody here?
Do you think climate change is part of this new normal, Mayor?
You know, people all over the world ask me that and try to create the politics of this.
No,
I will
no.
say
Just a question.
that there are changes in our climate. I'm not sure, and I'm not attributing where those changes come. Call it a cyclical changes in the Earth's ecosystem, or if it's man-made or whatever it is. The reality of it is, I'm meeting with corporations and individuals all up and down the Mississippi River that are planning for higher water challenges created by a difference in the weather patterns. So leave it at that. We need to be at the forefront of making a decision related to protecting our community, our businesses, our citizens, and our riverfront. So that's where I'm taking this, and I've had that question asked to me literally at a conference in Bonn, Germany, and in DC, and in Canada. And I think on all those issues, the answer is the same. We have responsibility to the citizens in our community. We have responsibilities for the businesses in our community, and we've got to take the current trends that are happening and deal with those most effectively.
What river stage can you raise it before you get in trouble with your clearance diagrams?
The what? I didn't hear.
It's the railroad.
So right now, the limiting factor is the Iowa American Water floodgate has to close at 21. So that is really the limiting factor that we've all been kind of marching to at this point, is
That
at
is the
21.
control. That's
Yeah.
the control of the area for
Yeah.
sure.
The floodgate on the railroad, is that?
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
The railroad goes through there.
Yes, it
And there wouldn't be any plan for you to change that fixed elevation rail at that closure structure relative to other closure structures like in Clinton and Turtle Creek or someplace like that where they got a jack gate. I mean, would you raise that elevation, or is the viaduct controls the clearance diagram?
By the viaduct, are you referring to the bridge that we underpass? Yeah, at some point, you're right.
You don't know
That
that.
would be the physical limitation, clearance underneath there, but as Nicole indicated, to this point, we've just tried to get input from the city, and 21 seemed like the right number to work with because of the waterworks and because of, I think there's some ballpark issues above that number too, so that's what we've worked with.
Good. Well, again, I guess I want to thank everybody for being here. This was a great discussion. Tony and your team, thank you. I think the one thing that, you know, I know there's been discussion, I've talked to a lot of people, challenges that they've had with railroads. There is a new condition going on, and I appreciate that. When I tell a lot of people, they are very delighted to hear other cities working with different railroads. So thank you for being here, thank you for your interest, thank you for your commitment to having somebody sit on the group and be part of it. So that's the best way to do this as well, and we'll figure that out. Thank you our team, they're doing a great job, and all of our elected officials and the Riverfront Improvement Commission. Obviously, not only are they very adept at being on top of the issues, but very passionate about protecting our riverfront. And thank you for that as well. So if there are no other questions, we will adjourn. And you guys can go to your technical planning.
I didn't want to lose it.
Yeah.